And it's getting loaded. In the meantime, again, I'd like to remind everybody, if you can put in the chat box what county you are representing, that would be greatly appreciated, so we can keep track of that. And it looks like we're good for YouTube. So I will go ahead and turn the time over to Hailin. So you have the rest of the time. We have about 45 minutes or so for your presentation, give or take. And then the rest of the about 15 minutes or so for questions and answers. All right.
Okay, thank you, David. I'm going to share my screen. Do you see this, my slides okay?
Yes.
Just a second. Start from the beginning. That's always a good idea. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'm glad to spend a few minutes talk to you about soil health. This is one of important issue to me. This because this time of year, you probably would like to see a lush green lawn or beautiful flowers and a productive vegetable garden. So have you thought about the importance of soil? Actually, without a good soil, the above ground would not look very nice. So when we think about gardening or agriculture, the first step to do is to take care of our soil. Otherwise, you're not going to harvest what you want to harvest or get a beautiful scenery like we are seeing right now. From the agriculture point of view, the soil actually plays an important role. There are several important so-called bread baskets of the world, like North Central US, the East European or Northeast China. Those areas produce most of the food we consume in the world, like corn, soybean, wheat, and others. So actually soil is closely associated with human civilization. Where there is a good soil, typically there is a long history of civilization. So, narrow down to what we do here around our yard, we also need to think about what type of soil we have. Is that soil healthy enough or in good quality? Now, lately, farmers have been talking quite a bit about soil health. This is a definition about soil health. Basically, it's the soil quality we are considered about, and the soil's ability to support plants, to provide a good living ecosystem for different organisms, animals, and human activity. On the left side is a picture we call soil profile. We are most concerned about the top maybe 6 to 1 foot of soil. If you take good care of that or make those top layer in high quality, most likely your gardening will be much easier. So we need to have some understanding about soil health. Well, in a layman's term, what is a good soil health? Just like humans, what is our health? It involves different aspects. For soil, like the depth is important. If you want to have an orchard or vineyard, you should have a deep soil. The soil should be able to drain excess water. The drainage is important. The soil should be able to supply adequate amount of nutrients, but not too much. Too much will have other problems. We may touch it a little bit later. And Good soil should have plenty of beneficial organisms because those organisms keep the soil alive, recycling organic materials. When the soil has good uh, amount of beneficial organism, the pathogens or pests actually will be suppressed. The weeds may be also suppressed because your plants, you plant they're doing better, so they're able to compete with weeds. And the soil should be free of contaminants, whether it's heavy metals or other chemicals. So when you apply chemical to your land, make sure you do not over apply. In the urban area, there's some place called a brownfield actually contaminate in the past by metals or oil and others. That's something will affect the health of the soil. Basically, if you have a good soil, it can resist unfavorable conditions much better. Just like us, if our health is good, maybe we're not going to be impacted by the coronavirus as somebody with a poor health. So soil health is very important. We talked about the composition of soil during our master gardeners training. Basically, the soil is made up of air, water, minerals, and organic matter. The air and water basically are in between this mineral and organic matter in the pore spaces. They should be able to have fresh air or adequate amount of water. So we need to keep them in balance. Organic matter here actually is very critical in terms of soil health. If you just have minerals, no organic matter or very low in organic matter, the soil health is not very good because organic matter plays so many different roles. We're going to list some of them later. So if you go out to your yard or to a field, can you judge the soil health or quality just by visual exam or using a shovel or spade to dig into the soil? Well, some of the indications are very obvious. One of them is how do your plants look? If they look stunned, maybe something is wrong with the soil. The moisture condition, if some place is pounding, the other place is cracking, well, maybe the texture or clay content is not ideal. And if the soil contains pathogens, it will induce disease, affect the plant's growth. But I think the color is another thing we can easily tell by looking at the soil. It tells us a lot about the soil's health. Compaction, erosion, those are obvious signs about the soil's health. If you have a good soil, they should not be very compacted or not easily subject to erosion. Now, dispersion, that means the soil has lots of sodium there. When it rains, the clay just dispersed. Water could not penetrate through the soil. And when it dry, it cracks like this one here. That's obvious sign of a poor health of soil. Friability, that means how easy to work with the soil. If you dig a soil, it should be able to, disappear when you throw on the ground. If it's a big chunk like a rock, well, the structure is not very good. And then if you see some signs of life, like organisms there, earthworm, insects, that's also tell you your soil maybe is in pretty good condition. If nothing lives in the soil health may be poor, okay? Now those are two pictures with very different soil quality. The ones on your left, it's dark and dark brown with good depths. the plants growing in the soil looks very healthy, right? That tells you the soil might be pretty good. The color actually is indication of lots of humic substance. It's a decomposed organic matter. And on the right, this is from Perkins, Oklahoma. This red clay, very little organic matter, very compacted, and the plants is growing poorly. So those are the signs of soil health. And you can use some of them to judge in your yard when you dig the soils. To dig a little bit deeper into the soil health, okay, basically it's a combination of soil physical, chemical, and biological properties. Those three are just like the three legs of a stool. If one leg is missing, the stool may just fall over. It's the same thing here. If the physical condition is not good, we cannot call the soil a good soil. Soil is chemical and biological properties, okay? So we need to have all these three properties in the ideal condition to have a healthy soil. A few years ago, I went back to China and I visited some vegetable production facilities. I found lots of hoop houses like this. Basically, they're abandoned this after many years of intensive vegetable production. Well, what I learned from them was nothing grew there because the pH was too low, the salt level was too high, and then probably a lot of disease problems there. So they could not grow anything. They started with good soil health. They did not maintain it. It became a very bad soil. And I came back there. I heard they found a solution. Basically, they just submerged this greenhouse underwater for 2 months. It changed the dynamics of the microorganism, killed the pathogens. The salts are leached out. The pH actually and the saturated condition increased. After that, they drained the soil. Actually, they make it productive. So those are the things we need to try to avoid to prevent our soils become bad, okay? Okay, let's just go into each of these three important soil properties. Like physical property, basically we're talking about soil texture, the proportion of sand, silt, and clay. And then the bulk density, it's the weight per volume of soil. If the soil is very compact, it's heavy, and the roots will not be able to grow there. The water will not penetrate through very well. Also, it does not hold much water. And sometimes form a crusting on the surface. Those are just important physical properties. But most important one is something we call aggregates. These aggregates actually are formed by sticking those sand, silt, and clay particles together with humus and some other chemicals. So with the good aggregates, the soil will be able to provide a good condition for plants to grow there. Like here, this is a good aggregates. You put in the water, the big clots did not like this one. This one just dispersed right away. It's not a water stable. This is water stable because it has lots of organic matter to replicate around. It's a good soil. Now, structure, as we mentioned, like a granular structure with a good structure, large aggregates. Between them, you have a pore space for air and water. Inside these aggregates, lots of small space to hold water there. So under drought condition, they still have water released for plants. If there's a big rain, the water can be drained out because there are pore space here. So with a good structure, there are many benefits to the soil system. Here I list more about good structure because it's important. Without good structure, the plants cannot resist wind and water erosion. The soil cannot resist wind and water erosion. Like the Oklahoma Panhandle, when there is a big wind, you see the plume of dust because the structure is not very good. And with good structure, the bulk density is ideal. Excuse me, let me have a sip of water. With a good structure, the aeration is ideal. And also it's easy to cultivate because it's not densely packed. But more importantly, the roots can grow in the soil very easily. Then the above ground will do much better. Okay. Now, some of the important chemical properties, many of you have tested your soil. Basically, those are important factors as well, like soil pH, the nutrient level, the salt level, or is the soil contaminated by metals or other pollutants? Those are under chemical properties. And as I said, you can get a soil sample, get them tested. However, physical properties are mostly diagnosed by just observation.
I got this bill here, something that I'm supposed to fill out.
Most commercial labs are not able to do many of physical analysis, such as soil texture.
Sorry, Hailin, everyone, please make sure you're on mute because we're getting some background noise.
So as experienced master gardeners, you're very knowledgeable about some of these chemical properties like a pH. Most plants can do okay between 5 and 8, but they probably like close to neutral, like between 6 and 7. So if it's outside the range, you may consider to do something like apply lime or sulfur to adjust the pH. Otherwise, whatever else you do may not be able to get your plants going again. So I think a pH is something very important but easy to correct. The next important chemical property is the nutrients. As you all know, there are 16 different nutrients required by plants, but you don't need to worry about all of them. The most important 3 nutrients are nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. If you take care of these 3 nutrients, I think you're going to do very well. The other nutrients, like micronutrients, secondary nutrients, typically they're okay in good supply when you have a good healthy soil. But sometimes people apply certain amendments. Like one homeowner from maybe Oklahoma City area contacted us recently. The plants showing severe potassium deficiency, but the soil test showing good potassium in the soil. But I also noticed that soil has an extremely high magnesium. That's the Mg. Well, the Mg and K, they're similar in chemistry. So too much magnesium interfere the plant uptake of potassium. That's what's showing potassium deficiency. The reason was this homeowner applied Epsom salt. I don't know why using Epsom salt, but typically you do not need of this kind of amendments. So not only supply adequate amount, but you should be able to balance according to plant's requirement. So in terms of nutrient supply, basically you should follow these 4R principles, like apply the fertilizer using the right source. How do you know what source to use? Well, soil test will tell you. Apply the right rate or amount. Soil test will tell you that too. And then apply them at the right time. That's what you need to decide when to apply and the right place, okay? So if you do this, your nutrient management or fertilization program will be not too expensive. It's going to be socially probably acceptable and environmentally friendly, okay? But in most cases, people apply imbalanced nutrients. For example, like phosphorus. Plants need more nitrogen than phosphorus, but they keep using 10, 20, 10 year after year. So the phosphorus build up in the soil to an extremely high level. We still have this problem in Oklahoma. Okay, this is from one master gardener's class. I tabulate them like this, and the bottom line is 65 right here. That's the adequate level. Most of them are high or extremely high. Okay, well, this high phosphorus would negatively affect plant growth, like tie up micronutrients throughout the balance of the other nutrients. Also, these nutrients can get lost into your pond, like trigger this algal bloom. Most people don't like algal bloom like this. I think somebody contacted us recently asking, how to take care of this one. Can they throw straw in the pond? Well, I said, if you put straw there, that's another nuisance, make your pond looking bad. And this straw probably will decay, release organic material. That's not going to help to solve that problem. But more importantly is to prevent over-apply nutrients you do not need by just doing a simple soil testing. So we talked about how to collect a soil sample, get a soil tested. Every step of the way you should to make sure your sample is representative to the area you want to find out the nutrient level. Like you should get a separate sample for your vegetable garden, one for your flower beds, maybe another one or two for your lawns. That way you can manage them differently. And a lot of homeowners complain, I tested soil last year is this level and this year is so different. Well, make sure every time you take the soil to the same depths, because it's very different between the surface layer and the sublayer. If you don't get the soil sample to the same depths every year, there's no comparison between years. So make sure you using the right tool, like a soil sampling probe. Each county extension office should have some available. You can check it out. Collect multiple points to make a composite sample. Make sure the bucket is clean, never used to hold lime or fertilizer. So that's how you collect a good soil sample. And this will tell you most of the chemical properties of your soil. And sometimes it's not nutrient deficiency affect the plant's growth. It's the salt built up in the soil. If you see white stuff on the soil surface in the spring, that's accumulation of salt. When the salt accumulates, the soil property will be deteriorated. Nothing can grow sometimes when it gets severe. If it's not too severe, you will see like this. The soil is not too dry, but the plants are wilting because they have a hard time to get water taken up because the salinity or salt level is high. So this is something we can test as well. We can do the same test with your routine soil test. So we covered the physical property and biochemical properties. Biological property is also important. This is something you cannot do very much. once you have a good physical chemical properties, the biological property probably is automatically improved, like the right species, amount of bacteria or other organism will live in the soil to functioning well and decompose the residues, help to build soil structure. So actually, these days we can even measure your biological activity in the soil by incubating certain amount of soil, put the chip with chemical coated, and then the microorganism will breathe out carbon dioxide, will absorb on this paddle, and then the color change from blue to yellow. And we take them out, put a digital meter to read it, and it will tell you the microbial activity, and using that as an indication of a biological activity. So there are a lot of labs are equipped to do things like this. A lot of organic farmers start to using some of these new tests. But the easy way to check on your soil biological property is just to turn the soil over to see if you have earthworms or other insects. If you dig around, you could not find a single earthworm. Well, maybe the soil is not in very good condition, because earthworm likes a good aeration, good organic matter supply, not too dense, right bulk density. So this is one of the ways you can check on that. You can start to improve your soil health if you could not even find a single earthworm there. Well, how can we improve our soil health if your soil is not good enough? Or if your soil is already good, how to maintain that soil health? Here I just listed some of the steps you may be able to follow to practice at home. First of all, manage more by disturbing soil less. You know, some people like using the rototiller to till their soil to death. Every time you till the soil, you destroy the structure. It takes more time to rebuild that structure. So try not to till the soil or work on the soil too much. Diversify soil biota with plant diversity. If you always plant the same species, like pepper after pepper, year after year, that's not very ideal. You should rotate with tomato, beans, or other plants. That way you have a diversified microorganism community as well. You keep living roots throughout the year if possible, because the roots, even you do not harvest vegetables, they scavenge nutrients, keep nutrients in place, also supply organic matter. If you can keep the soil covered, it will keep the soil cool during the summertime, also prevent soil loss like erosion, and protect the soil structure. If you test your soil, apply the nutrients or lime as needed. Unfortunately, most people apply fertilizer like this time of the year to their lawn. They don't even know exactly what they need or how much they need. So the good idea is to test the soil, then apply fertilizers. But more importantly is to add organic matter to your soil, because organic matter decreases over time because microorganisms keep breaking them down. We have to occasionally or frequently add organic matter to the soil. If you till the soil very often, you just aerate the soil and boost the decomposition. You're going to lose organic matter much faster. Now, I emphasized the importance of organic matter a few times. This is because organic matter plays so many different roles. If you have adequate organic matter in the soil, your soil's physical condition will be improved. Then the water will infiltrate into the soil instead of lost through runoff. And the soil can hold more water there. When the drought comes, it can resist the drought. And good organic matter content will reduce erosion. Organic matter itself is plant material, so it will supply all the 16 nutrients we talked about. And organic matter has the ability to retain nutrients. That means don't let the nutrients get lost either by leaching or by runoff. And organic matter is food and energy to microorganisms as well as some insects like earthworms. So if you have adequate organic matter supply and your physical, chemical, and biological properties will be somewhat improved. So where do you get those organic matter? First of all, I recommend homeowners keep all this green stuff growing from your yard, in your yard. You know, I don't throw anything away from a yard except maybe diseased plants. Like here on the left, at the end of the season, I chop up these tomato plants into small pieces, and I just directly bury into the soil, let it decay. It adds organic matter and recycles nutrients. You know, there are many different plant residues produced in the summertime. You should be able to recycle them, and then you can cut down actually the amount of fertilizer needed. Or you can, make a compost using those materials, and then using compost for your vegetable or lawns. So there are many different ways you can recycle your yard waste, or you can buy compost or get compost from places they provide it. So we still see people have a bag behind the lawnmower. They collect clippings. To me, it's the biggest waste of time and resource, and also organic matter. We should do away with that using a mulch lawnmower. Just recycle all the grass clippings. If you do not remove mulch, why do you need to apply a lot of fertilizer? You're not harvesting anything. Unfortunately, a lot of people just keep bagging their clippings every week. In the fall, they bag their leaves and take to landfill. Those are very valuable organic resources. We should keep them on site, use as our source of organic matter to enrich our soils. When in the spring or fall, there are lots of tree leaves fall on the ground. You can bag them or you can recycle them. So this is what I did lately. I used this leaf shredder, shred the leaves into fine pieces. Now I use that as a mulch for my tomato plants. Actually, this picture I just took a couple hours ago. And I collected this shredded leaves about 2 months ago or 3 months ago in March, and use it right now. And you put there, it does not take a lot of space. All these leaf materials are rich in nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, nutrients, and you cover them on the ground, reduce evapotranspiration. You don't have to water as often, and these leaves will decay, add nutrient and organic matter to your soil. So that's just some of the ideas I practiced at my yard to recycle nutrients. Okay. And then recently, a lot of farmers, homeowners started using cover crops. Cover crops basically is planted to cover the ground, not intended for harvesting. Like on the right here, excuse me, I sowed pea early in the spring as a cover crop, and then just planted the tomato right in the middle. Actually, we harvested some shoots as a vegetable before I chopped them down to the ground as a cover. And I noticed the OSU campus in the wintertime, they used a lot of cover crops to cover the flower beds. I think either rye or something. It looks really nice. I think it serves a good purpose to cover the ground. Also add some beauty in the winter time because it's a cold season. And if you're using a legume crop, that means the crop can fix nitrogen like soybean, clover, alfalfa. They have ability to fix nitrogen. So they not only supply organic matter to the soil, they also add nitrogen fixed from the atmosphere. So for these fields, they plowed under some clover here. For this season, they probably don't need any nitrogen fertilizer. And this is called tillage radish. When you have a compaction below the plow layer, this taproot actually go into the dense layer to loose it up. And when they rot and leave a hole in the ground, actually loose up the soil. This is a good cover crop as well. So there are many ideas. You can add organic matter and make your garden even more exciting, more interesting. Another practice people have been using is to convert or change from conventional tillage to no-till or reduced tillage. For example, if you plant pumpkins or watermelon, you just when planting a large area, you don't have to till the whole area. You just dig a small hole in the middle of the field and plant it without disturbing all the areas. Because remember, we talked about managing more with less disturbing of the soil, because every time you till the soil, you destroy the structure. And lots of farmers already using no-till in Oklahoma, like plant corn, soybean, or cotton in a wheat stubble. That way they do not till the soil. And this is one of the practices we think will help to maintain or build soil quality. So those are just some of the ideas I thought are important when we think about the soil health, because soil health is important to our plant growth. So if you want your plant to grow nicely or harvesting a lot of vegetable, you should think about improve your soil health or maintain your soil health. Okay. Now, when we talk about soil health, basically you need to think about the properties of the soil, like physical, chemical, biological properties. Do everything to improve the physical property, like not compact too much. Chemical, like a pH, should be in the right range. Nutrients in adequate supply, not too much. With those two improved, the biological properties should be also in the right area. That way you have a good soil. One of the important practice we can use to build our soil health is to adding organic matter to your soil, because organic matter provides so many different functions. Also, we try to minimize some of the tillage practice, try to disturb the soils less. That way we'll preserve the good soil structure you already have. Now, as far as organic matter, what's the adequate amount? Some people try to reach the unrealistic level, like 20, 15%. That's way too much. When you have too high organic matter, there are some other issues. To me, like 4, 5%, that would be really good target. If less than 2% is a little bit low, but about 5%, maybe that's a little bit too high. So just to be moderate. I think that's all the information I would like to talk to you here, and I'll be happy to address any questions you have. So here is my contact information. You can email me and call me if you have any questions. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Zhang. Does anybody have any questions? You can unmute yourself and ask, or you can put it in the chat box. So we have one. Whoops, where'd it go? Okay, chat box. How do you determine amount of organic matter?
Okay, well, you cannot do it at home, but we can do it very easily in the laboratory. We actually process your sample. We determine the carbon in the soil, and we convert the carbon to organic matter. So we do that a lot. Most Oklahoma farmlands have very low organic matter, maybe less than 1%. Most gardens probably have a pretty good one, 3–4%. So if you're interested in determining organic matter content, when you submit your soil sample, just check one of the box on the tag.
A question in relation to that, Hailin, you mentioned the microbial activity test. Is that worth doing versus the organic matter test? And does your lab provide that test? And if so, how much does it cost?
Okay, that's a very good question. At this moment, I do not recommend to do the, we call the carbon dioxide test. Organic matter test actually is easy and cheap, and it give you probably more useful information. The reason for the microbial activity test is depend on a lot of conditions. Like a winter time, you get one number, summertime, you get different number. When the soil is dry or wet, you get a big fluctuation. So that test is not mature, just still in a research state.
Okay, good. Question, I have nematode damage on some vegetable plants. Can I still compost these plants?
Well, I think if you do it correctly on composting, raise the temperature to 160, 170 degrees, I think that probably will kill the nematodes. But most likely when we do it at home in a small container, like my little composter, we cannot generate that high temperature. That may not be able to kill the nematodes or some other pathogens. So it depends on, what kind of composting facility you have. If you can really reach the ideal temperature, I think that should work.
Good, okay. What was the name of the cover crop with the root at that loosened heavy soil?
That's a radish. They call tillage radish. Actually, it's one of the, what do you call that, ethnic vegetable. The Chinese Asians like radish. They use that as vegetable. So we actually grew some in my garden. You can buy seeds from probably some vegetable seed dealers. Just ask for tillage radish.
Tillage radish, okay. How can you add organic matter without disturbing the soil structure? How do you till it in?
Well, I using shovel. So I put a lot of leaves on the surface and then just using shovel to dig it up and bury the soil instead of just smash all the clods or microstructures. If you're using rotary tiller, that's the most destructive way of doing that. Another way, like I did, using that as a mulch, put on the surface. it start to decay from the bottom, and then wait until the end of the season. The layer you put around the tomato plants getting thinner and thinner. That means some of them are already decayed. If you have flower beds, you put mulching on top of it, it gets thinner over time too. That means that the organic matter is getting into the soil. A lot of them are lost as carbon dioxide as well.
Yeah, I think, when we talk about no-till and, try not to disturb the soil as much as possible, sometimes we just still have to start somewhere, right? So
Right.
usually you have to get in and till at least once to kind of break it up so that you can start working your organic matter in it. And then, like you mentioned, turning it over into the soil using something maybe, of course, if you have a huge garden, a tiller is probably going to be more efficient as long as you aren't doing it, frequently, 2 or 3 times a year, and right? Is that
Yeah,
the
I
correct
mean,
statement?
yes, I do, turn my soil over. I do not do no-till. It's hard because we just work on the garden a lot. We step on it, we compact it. So eventually you have to, turn it over. But no-till is really for large scale, for little, small garden, like less than 100 square feet. It is hard to practice.
Yeah, unless you live in the Corn Belt, like Iowa, Illinois, right, Dennis? Where you can just pretty much dig a hole and put a plant in the ground and it will usually grow. Oklahoma, you can't often do that. You got to loosen it up and start somewhere, usually by loosening up and trying to work some organic matter into it. Okay, let's see. What were the potential problems with too much organic matter?
Well, if you have too much organic matter, like 15% or 20%, the soil is too light. It does not actually hold much water. You get drained out or just evaporated. So you have to keep watering a lot.
And it dries out a lot faster too, I would typically, right?
Yeah.
If it's a high organic material.
Right. If you're using compost or manure as an organic matter source, you come with some other issues like nutrient level are too high. And we often see some samples with like a 200 nitrate, 1000 potassium, and very high phosphorus. And then you have a salinity problem. That means the salt level builds up. And lately we got a lot of garden soils. They're not really soil. It's very light, so we cannot use our routine soil test to perform a test. So we recommend using like a greenhouse growth media test. But that's the area we need to do some more work in terms how to make a good recommendation. So too much is not ideal either.
Someone threw in a turf question in here. So since Dennis Martin is on, we might let him help us answer that question. It says, I have a brown spot that shows up in my Bermuda every year. I'm pretty sure it is not grubs. What may be causing it?
The time of year is very important with that. Also, images are very helpful. For instance, if it's approximately circular or if there's several of them that kind of coalesce together, but they maybe will form like a Mickey Mouse imprint or something like that. And if you see them right after green up, it could be spring dead spot disease. That is, if it's Bermuda grass. If you're talking about tall fescue, we get into brown patch fungal disease at this time of year once we get into hot, humid weather. We also have a little bit of dollar spot disease on common Bermuda grass right now that if someone has missed a fertilization. And then anytime that you have a turf grass area with shallow soil over bedrock or some other rooting restriction that's underneath there, as soon as you have your turf grass exploit the water that's available, you go into a little flash drought, you can have a brown spot develop in as little as 10 to 14 days. But digital images, they're very easy for us to take a look at. And like I said earlier, about 85% of the turf problems we can diagnose simply with the images. Thank you.
Thanks, Dennis. Do you recommend putting weeds in your compost pile?
Weeds, well, if already formed the seeds, I'm not sure the compost will completely kill the viability of the seeds. So maybe you need to think about that a little bit.
Yeah,
However,
that's what I would say is if it's not in seed, you could probably get away with it. Cut off the seed heads before you throw it in the compost pile, maybe.
right. Mhm.
So a tillage radish is a daikon radish.
Yeah, basically it's a daikon. Actually, I mean, there are several different varieties of daikon. That's probably one of it.
And what can you do to reverse high organic content?
Okay. Well, you just stop adding more. I guess it will decreasing over time. Or you can just dig your soil a little bit deeper to bring some bottom soil to mix with your topsoil. But basically, actually it goes down quite quick. After a couple of years, your organic matter content will be probably reduced by quite a lot.
Okay. I see, Aaron, you said you'd like to ask this question. Did you want to type that in or go ahead and unmute yourself and ask the question?
Oh, yes. Thank you. It's just take me a long time to type it. I have a home on an acre, and I grow Bermuda, and I've got clay soil. So it's kind of compacted, and some of it grows well in certain parts, and other parts it's just surviving. So I think it's kind of as a result of the structure of the soil. There's not enough organic matter. I don't want to hire people and spend thousands and thousands of dollars, but I'd like to amend that soil in a way. And some reading I've done suggests that you can lay this on the top of the soil and water it, and it would change the soil over time. What's your thoughts on that to add topsoil and organic matter?
To a Bermuda grass lawn area?
Yeah.
I think you probably just fertilize adequately. The Bermuda grass is really tough. When you have a good grass, the root system will get better, and gradually improve the soil. And I don't know what David or Dennis think about. Some people using what do they call it? Aeration in the springtime. Basically, just poke hole 3-4 inches deep. And then you maybe apply some fine compost. Hopefully some of them will drop into the soil, speed up this improvement. Otherwise, I think if you maintain the fertility, have a good grass, it's a tough species.
Yes, I've noticed that it is durable, very hardy, and it survives, when others wouldn't. So then you are saying aeration. You think that's a good approach as well, with a core aerator.
Well, it would followed by some top dressing. So so aerating it opens up holes and allows your top dressing, your organic matter that you're spreading out over the turf area to fall down in and work its way down a little bit deeper. So that would be one way to help improve the organic matter in that soil. Dennis, do you have any comments or thoughts on that?
I thought Hailin did a great job of explaining those inputs. I'd just add, run the cutting height as high as you possibly can tolerate it, return your clippings, irrigate it if you can afford to, and Bermuda grass is an amazing carbon fixation machine. And if you take a soil profile after just a few years, it's amazing how dark that soil is in that A horizon that it is helping to build after just a few years.
Thank you very much. This has been a great presentation. I'm glad I got a chance to listen. Thanks again.
Thanks for joining us. Anybody else have any more questions? Someone asked if Aaron's Bermuda grass is in full sun. I would assume it is. Okay. Any other questions for Hailin or me, or since Dennis is on here? All right, thanks everybody. We're almost at our time. Let's see. One more question just popped up. We have a sandy loam soil with a lot of sheet flow across our Bermuda lawn. We planted a cover crop last fall of annual ryegrass and Dutch white clover. How long will the organic mass last? That's a good question.
So cover crop on Bermuda grass lawn? Well, that's basically just intercropping, right?
Yeah. So annual rye was a cover crop for the fall to keep, you know, to provide, I guess, some to help reduce erosion and catch this any water flow, right? Put it back into the soil. My guess would be that you just need to maybe be more careful in your management of your turf grass, of your Bermuda. Since it's a sandy soil, you may have to fertilize and water more frequently to encourage a thick Bermuda grass lawn so that it helps solve that problem.
I'll just add with the white clover species, sometimes there's some hard seed, sometimes dormant seed, and you never know what you got out of seeding a clover, a white clover especially, until about 2 years after you've put the clover seed out there. I've used even inoculated clover in the past, got nothing the first year. It had to go through a dormancy cycle and then had an incredible amount of clover in subsequent years.
By the way, using those cover crops would help build up some organic matter. It's not a quick fix. It's very slow because when we talk about organic matter in the soil, we're talking about this humus, this resynthesized compound, these organic residues like the material you put on in the soil, it decays. Most of the 95% will disappear the same year. Very only small amount will actually add to the organic matter pool of the soil. So you need to be patient to see organic matter increase if you want to build it naturally.
And maybe one more question. We got, what can be grown over a septic tank that has only about 4 inches of soil? And Dennis replied, sedums and cacti over a septic tank like it is shallow bedrock. So yeah, sedums, cacti. Turf grasses would probably be too much in terms of possibly root invasion, maybe, I don't know.
Well, I'm glad you and Dennis are here. That's something I don't know.
Someone suggests making a berm over it. And sometimes blue grama and hairy grama will work over shallow bedrock. So there's a couple of ideas for you.
Yeah, under the new regulations, you probably are not allowed to have a septic system if the soil is only a few inches deep.
Yeah, typically it would be a lot deeper than just 4 inches, right?
Right. They're using soil profiling to decide where you can lay their drain pipes.
Right. Okay. Well, I'd like to thank everybody again, and maybe before you leave, if you haven't already, put what county you are representing in the chat box. And then next week, we have Dr. Eric Rebeck, who will be talking about beneficial insects and biological control. Same bat place, same bat channel. We'll see you again next Tuesday. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, thank you. Have a good summer.
Thank you, Hailin.
All right. Okay, bye, David.
Bye, thanks.